Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Let's Be Honest with Peter Kozodoy. We are almost 1 week to the day from the launch of Honest to Greatness. It's been a crazy, crazy week. Just this morning, I had an interview with Today.com, the Today Show. So we are picking up amazing traction, and that's thanks to everyone out there who has supported the mission and who has bought copies of Honest to Greatness for you, your friends, your family, your coworkers, and even your pets. And I really, really appreciate all of the support. It's an important topic, and we need everyone we can to help the world be more honest and realize that it helps us achieve outcomes. And to help me prove that point, I have a very, very special leader here with me today, Kelly Ruta. Kelly, say hi to everyone and welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited and honored to be here. I'm really, really pumped to have this conversation with you.
Excellent, as am I. So let's give everyone just a 3-4 minute overview of who you are, what you do, and what gets you really fired up.
Yeah, absolutely. So above all, I am a mom, a wife, a daughter. Family first is kind of a hashtag that I use, even though my business feels like my third baby. This is my second career. I was a clinical psychotherapist for 20 years before I made the leap into entrepreneurship. Above all, I am a lover of all things beach and coffee. I am an admitted coffee snob. I am not going to lie about it or hide it. It is the truth. And really, in terms of what inspires me, there are so many things, but I would say the clients that I work predominantly with women, and their success, their growth, their ability to defy statistics. That's something that I hope we talk about in a little bit. That's really core to me. It's core to what I teach. I am a lover of underdogs and watching them win. And honestly, really inspired. It sounds so cheesy, but it's really true. I'm inspired a lot by my kids. My kids both have ADHD diagnoses. My older son also has an OCD diagnosis. And I did not realize when I became a parent that they would probably teach me more than I would ever teach them. So I'm inspired by them every single day.
I love that. It's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Kelly.
Sure.
So the show is Let's Be Honest. So
Yep.
we want to go, a little deeper than the surface level to let everyone else out there know, what it's really like to do the kind of work you do and live the life you have.
Yes.
So take us back to a time over your career where you had to get brutally honest with yourself as a leader. And it could be personal, business, or family. What was the situation? What happened and what did you do?
Yeah. And this is a brilliant question. And I love that the tagline in your book is about being brutally honest, because that is an accurate word. I've had to be honest with myself, brutally honest with myself several times, but I would say one of the times that had the biggest impact on my business was coming face to face with the truth that I had real issues with trust. I grew up hearing, you're really smart, you can do everything yourself, don't ask people for help, that's weak, that's selfish, it's irresponsible, like pull yourself up by the bootstraps and stop being lazy and get back to work. And I bumped up against trying to scale my business. This was probably about 3 or 4 years ago now. And I couldn't understand what was happening. I was checking all the boxes. I was doing all the right things. And yet I kept bumping up against ceilings that didn't make any sense to me. And I had to take a really good hard look at what was going on. And really what had happened was that because of trauma in my childhood, which I speak freely about this. I'm very big on removing shame from the things, that are traumatizing or dysfunctional in our lives. But because of trauma I'd been exposed to, I had really disconnected trust. I trusted myself implicitly, like I will double down on me any day. But I had a lot of trouble trusting other people, so I didn't ask for help. And that slowed my business. It made me a poor leader. I lost time. It's the one thing you can't make more of. And once I realized that was the truth, I had to do the deep quite painful work of plugging that back in. And once that happened, things really started to take off. But that was I really had to slow down and look in the mirror and say, okay, it's time to deal with this, even though you don't want to.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
One of the things I say to my clients over and over again is 99% of business problems are personal problems in disguise.
No
And
question.
unless we can accept that, right? And then do the kind of work it takes to figure out why our sales problem is really a confidence problem, or why my scaling operations problem is really a can't ask for help problem.
Right.
It's amazing once you trace those spirals, how much clarity and confidence can be had. And it has nothing to do with business. And Kelly,
100%.
that's something that like you could have told me at 22 when I started my company, wouldn't have believed you. Could have told me at 28, still wouldn't have believed you. Like I had to learn the hard way that's the case. And now that's most of the work I do with my clients is actually, through a group program that we get to put those things on the table and deal with them like you were describing.
Absolutely.
So that's such important work.
I'm a fan of that hashtag mindset before mechanics, because I really do believe most of business success and even life success, I don't really believe in compartmentalizing those. I know people like to try to say, oh, that's about business and this is about life, but you bring yourself to everything.
100%.
So there's really no, compartmentalizing it. And so that's why I'm so passionate about my work, because when you get the inner workings right, then executing on the strategy and the tactics becomes far easier for you to be wise about and consistent about, but also to not take it personally when things don't work out, because guess what? You're gonna bomb. That's just part of the success journey. So I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, I don't know if you'll agree with this, but I think sometimes the compartmentalization and the obsession over trying to balance work and life actually can lead to more frustration and shame and feeling like, why can't I figure this out? And it's because it's not figure outable. It's just the same mental game we play all day long.
You and I are having the same exact conversation all the time, which I so appreciate, because when you're speaking it, you're speaking your truth. But then when you hear other people echoing the same thing, it's like, yes, people actually understand this. I tell my clients to stop using the word balance, because for women, I work predominantly again with women. And for women, we've gotten really strong cultural messages around balance. Like, you can either be a really successful CEO or you can be a good mother. And you can't balance it well. You're going to have to sacrifice and give up. And it's just almost a dangerous word for women. So I really get them to stop using the word balance. And I ask them to step in and create the dance between business and your own life and your relationships. Because when you learn to dance instead of balancing all the time, there's not so much resistance and tension and stress about it. It just becomes more of a natural flow.
Fluid.
Yes.
Fluid and easy.
Yeah.
I love that so much. Yeah. So Kelly, you've done a ton of things. You've helped a lot of people. Take us to your biggest win ever in life, the one that fills you with the most pride. Share that with us. And then if you would share with us a biggest loss or even regret.
Absolutely. So I love when people ask me this question, because, human beings are wired for story, right? So we want to hear about that moment when you had the greatest win and it changed everything. And so I don't mean to be disappointing, but my answer is a little bit more general. The thing I would say I'm the most proud of, that has been my biggest accomplishment, is that I have defied every statistic that exists that relates to my early life experience. So I started my very young life at the age of 3 with sexual abuse, and went on for many years to struggle with depression, anxiety, anorexia and bulimia, PTSD. I mean, you name it, I've probably been diagnosed with it before I started diagnosing other people. And with each of those diagnoses comes a whole set of statistics about what will probably happen to you and your life, with some, variation in factors. And the thing that at almost 50 years old that I look back on and I just feel so good about is that those statistics and those diagnoses and those experiences did not get to determine my future experience. And I have defied all of them, all of them. I was suicidal multiple times as a very young person. And so today, people who know me now are a little bit surprised to hear these things I tell them that happened between sort of birth and 25. The second 25 were very, very different. And so that's what I'm most proud of. And I feel like those skills of resilience and fortitude and clarity and deeper knowing and working with your mind and your emotions, these are skill sets that entrepreneurs, well, really anybody would benefit from learning, but entrepreneurs have to build these and have to habituate them, because that's how you defy the statistics. So I would say that's the thing I'm most proud about. In terms of missteps and regrets, I see them as two separate things. So I think I don't use the word regrets, and I don't have any. And the reason why is because I think they're toxic in nature. Now, I can look back on my life and my business and go, did not get Mom of the Year award that day. Definitely didn't knock it out of the park. And there are days I can look back on any of my businesses and go, wow, I feel like my brain exited the building that day, right? But I would say in terms of missteps was that I did not, as a female, put myself in the room with other females more powerful, more successful than myself earlier on in the journey. And it all stems back to what we discussed before, which was the trust issues. It's like, okay, she's smart. I'm smart. I can do it. I'm just going to figure it out. Had I put myself in those coaching groups, masterminds, those rooms with women where they had far surpassed me, my success would have grown faster, easier, and more joyfully. So I'd say that that's the biggest misstep I've made. And I wish I had done that earlier on in my career.
Such a great takeaway. Also one that, 25-year-old voted most likely to continue being a jerk, Peter wouldn't have believed if you had told him.
Right.
And the eye-opening epiphany for me was understanding much more about what a blind spot even is, how damaging it can be. I'm assuming you know the framework of the Johari window. Do you know that one, Kelly?
I'm familiar with it, but I would not say I'm an expert.
So it's got the, 4, I talk about it in chapter, I think it's 11 of my book, but it's got the 4 panes that describe, what you know about yourself and what others know about you.
Yes.
And that blind spot, the things that people pretty much know about you, but you are unwilling to admit to yourself, it is vast and it is dangerous. And until we get to a point where we can accept that it exists and start to explore what's in it, we miss so many opportunities. Like you talked about getting into that room. You'll never know what your lift would have been like had you had that help early on, right?
Right.
And that to me has made me sad in my own life, having to learn that the hard way. And so I needed a Kelly to tell me that 10 years ago. Thank you for being late, by the way. That's okay. I'm going to forgive you for it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Would you mind if I just added one thought to that, which is, I think it is really easy. I have more years than you to have hindsight, right? So it's easy to look back on a lot of things. And if I allowed myself to sit in judgment of them,
of course.
And I don't think that that's helpful. I think being an observer allows you to stay open to learning the lessons. But I think normalizing for people that we all have blind spots. This is part of I often just refer to things as this is the inescapable part of the human condition. Yes. And so it's not that somebody more successful than you doesn't have that. That's not at all true. We all have shared experiences that are unique to the human experience. And instead of judging them and deciding, oh, it's because I'm too young, too old, not smart enough, not wealthy enough, not educated enough, instead of just saying, gosh, you can't escape that. And so the strategic wise thing to do is just know that exists, normalize it, and invest in the solution for it. I think a lot of especially younger entrepreneurs are slowing themselves down because they think, I shouldn't have that. And that's just not true.
Not true at all. There's a sort of odd striving for perfectionism that doesn't exist. It's bizarre and
It's an ego
detrimental.
illusion. That's all perfectionism is. It's an ego illusion. And the more you strive for it, the way I explain it to my clients is regardless of what you believe spiritually, or if you're an atheist or whatever, whether you're an energy person or you're a God person, there's a part of the human condition is striving for expansion at all times, whether you think that's your spirit or God or just the universe expanding. We're always in a state of expansion. The ego wants nothing to do with that. The ego wants you to stay kind of right where you are, all comfy, even if you hate where you are, doesn't matter, because the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. And so that's what's at risk here, because the ego will always try to pull you back to that spot where you're not going to expand and grow. Always.
And is that why honesty is so tough for people, Kelly?
I think honesty is tough for a few reasons. Number one, in this day of, I mean, I didn't grow up in this social media, internet, age. I came into that later in life. I watched my teenagers grow up with this. I think I was just explaining the other day, I used the term internet muscles. In college, we called them beer muscles, where people would drink beer.
I have plenty of beer muscles, very strong, by the way.
I'm sure you have good stories about that. But, people drink too much and then say and do things they never would do when they're sober. Now, in the age of the internet, where you can hide behind a screen and use your keyboard, you say things you would never most likely say to another human being. And so when you are publicly being honest and vulnerable, you open yourself up for a great deal of judgment and criticism, and which I think is why a lot of women especially hold back, because they go, I can't handle that. And yes, you can. You just have to learn how. That's one of the things. The other is this: there is a paradigm shift that's happening now around weak versus vulnerable. And so I think honesty in the past, and unfortunately, especially for men, this is a cultural message that you all have to unlearn, is that this being honest and being vulnerable makes you weak. And it doesn't. It takes an incredibly strong person to tell his or her truth unwaveringly and without, negotiation. And I think that's something that we're just all learning, and we're practicing and building a muscle over. For me, it's a not negotiable. I'm not dishonest with myself. I'm not dishonest at all. Whether I say this all the time, if you met me in the frozen food aisle or you saw me on a stage in front of 2,000 people, you'd get the exact same person.
Yeah, maybe one a little colder than the other, depending on the temperature in the room.
Right? So it really depends on practice. And again, honesty is a skill. It is
Totally.
It's a choice at all times, but your ability to do it consistently without wavering, that's a skill and a habit.
Yep. I call it a lifelong pursuit. That, by the way, all of the leaders in my book, from Warren Buffett to the CEOs of Sprint and Berkshire and, Domino's Pizza and the rest, have all decided to do. So powerful, Kelly. Thank you for sharing all that. Listen, tell folks where they can keep up with you and follow along and learn more about you.
I appreciate you asking that. There are 3 really simple places to find me. You can find me on Instagram at Kelly S. Ruta. You can find me on Facebook, so facebook.com/Kelly Ruta Mentor, or you can find me on my website, which is very simply kellyruta.com.
Fantastic. Yep. And there it is right at the bottom for those of you watching on video. Kelly, thank you so much for coming and sharing your vulnerability and your expertise. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you.
I so appreciate you inviting me, and I want to thank you in return for being willing to be a man who is standing up and having brave, honest, and difficult conversations with other people, because the world really, really needs it right now. So thank you for doing this.
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome, right? And the reason I say it that way is like, this is accidental for me. People are like, why did you write a book about honesty? I'm like, I don't know, I didn't. I was studying how do you create results in your business and life in a 21st century with complete transparency, with social media, with all the bullshit out there. And I just happened to find that it was honesty. I am as surprised as anyone else. And I tell people, to your point about vulnerability, if I can learn the power of that kind of stuff, anyone can, because I had to be converted to it. So Listen, folks, if you have found this fascinating, right? Time after time, leaders come on the show and they talk about it. If we don't get honest, if we don't have honesty at the core of this, then none of the other things are possible. It's so important. Please go and pick up your copy of Honest to Greatness. It's now out. We're still in the first week. So, we're looking for the book to do as well as possible. So people like Kelly find that it's important and that it really can produce better outcomes, not only in our personal lives, but also in our businesses and society at large. Kelly, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Been a pleasure. Until next time, I'm Peter Kozodoy, and thanks for being honest.